guys, welcome to Credit 101 Part 2. By now you should have your binder, you should have the FCRA, and you should have the FDCPA. You should also have 3 credit reports. Now if you had issues printing those things out or pulling them up, please comment below because you're probably not alone and we can bring it to light and try to help others with it. Today I want to focus on understanding credit, how it works, and how that score works. I took the liberty of printing out the definition of credit. Credit, the ability of a customer to obtain goods or services before payment based on the trust that payment will be made in the future. And that is the dictionary's version of what credit is. It's sweetly wrapped up. However, the truth of it all is that credit really is the way that you manage debt. They issue you, extend credit to you, and then it turns into debt. That's how they make their money, and they kind of manage. They evaluate you through that process, and then give you a grade, and boom, there's your credit score. And so your credit score is kind of equivalent to a grade, and it's a measure of your credit risk. The higher your score, the less of a risk you are. The lower your score, you're a greater risk, and therefore you will be penalized for it with higher interest rates, or perhaps just being declined altogether, or denied credit altogether. So there are factors that come into play. Well, how did you arrive at the 650? How did you arrive at the 800? How did you arrive at the 550? There are several different factors, and the reason why I'm sharing these factors with you because it can kind of help you govern yourself accordingly as it relates to your credit, especially if you're trying to build it or repair it. And if you have existing credit, things that you do with your credit, every time you swipe, every time you pay or don't swipe, it's all impacting your credit. I had an account with TransUnion from 2005 and I closed it as recent as of 2012. For $9.99 a month, I was able to see all 3 credit reports. I was able to see all 3 credit scores, unlimited every day. And so I knew what 10 points drove it up and what 5 points, what drove it down 5 points, what drove it up 20 points, what drove it down 10 points. Every time I did something, I knew when creditors were posting to the credit bureaus, and I studied how the credit fluctuated. Think of what it was, how the credit fluctuated, and that's how I became educated. I still don't know the algorithms of how they arrive at the number that they arrive at. No one knows, only the people at FICO, but I do know the choices that I make, what drives it up and what drives it down, and that I can share with you. So one of the factors is your credit history, how long you've had the credit. One of the misconceptions about people that are trying to repair their credit is go ahead and close those accounts because credit is of the devil. You don't want to do it. It's taboo. No, ma'am, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. Keep those credit cards open. Even if you've had lates on them from this point on, make good payment and be consistent with that. But you have one thing working for you with that account, even if it has late, it's helping you with your credit history, or credit age is another thing that they call it, another name for it, credit age or credit history. So you don't want to close any old accounts. Don't do it. The other thing is your debt to credit ratio. It's how much debt you have versus how much credit you've been allotted. So for example, you have $1,000 in credit. You want to keep that debt to credit ratio. You want to keep that debt at about 35% of the available credit. 35%, which would be don't exceed $350 on that $1,000 charge card. Because if you do, it's going to hurt that debt to credit ratio factor of your credit score. So utilization is another factor. It is how you use the card. Is the balance out there staying high? What that's saying is that this person is spending more than what they're able to afford if you keep maxing it out, and that's hurting you. If you have credit just sitting out there, that's not good either because it's just collecting dust. There's no utilization. You're not using it. You're not utilizing it at all. Utilization is how you're using the credit. And let me tell you that if you want to build credit, you have to have credit. You have to use credit. So the misconception is, let me spend on it and let me pay it off. Let me spend on it and pay it off at the end of the month. That way I avoid interest. Yes, that is true. You do. But if you're trying to establish credit and build credit, if the credit bureau is reporting every month that balance is zero, guess what? According to the credit bureau, there's no utilization. Even though you are utilizing the card, you have to have them report something. So the trick is to don't exceed the 350, which is the 35% of the debt to credit ratio. But the trick is to spend on it, then maybe pay half and then pay it off. Spend on it, pay half, pay it off, or spend on it, pay a third, pay the other 2/3, and then pay it in full, then spend on it again. Whatever you can afford that's reasonable, but you're trying to build credit, you're trying to help the utilization, right? The other is the payment history, 30 days, 60 days, 120 days. You have your collection accounts, you have your bankruptcies, and you have judgments. All of that is reported to credit bureaus, and they really significantly hurt your credit. But guess what? Those 30 to 60 to 90 day lates, those are credit impacting within a 2-year time frame. So when you say you have bad credit, is it based on something that happened 3 or 4 years ago? Because guess what? The moment that you start making good payments and being consistent with that, it's a 2-year, year-to-date run. So if this is 3 or 4 years ago, even though legally it can stay on your credit for 7 years, if you make good payments, it's not going to impact your score beyond the 2-year benchmark. Now, your judgments are going to stay on there for 10 years, I believe, and bankruptcy for 10 years, I believe, 10 or 11 years, I believe. But those fall off. And even after about 3 or 4 or 5 years, they don't have an impact. They're going to be on your score, but they don't have an impact as much as it would be within that 2-year time frame. So the key is to continue to make good payments. If you haven't been, start today. Another tip I want to share is the 30-day late. You have to be 30 days late in order for them to report it. So if your bill is due on the 1st and you pay it on the 20th, yeah, you're late, and you probably had a late fee added to your account, but they can't report that to the bureau. If you're 29 days late, yeah, you're late, and you had to pay that late fee, but guess what? They can't report it to the bureau. So even if you're a little bit late as it relates to the billing due date, still go ahead and pay that. And not just say, well, I'll just double up on the next payment. Because if you do, then you're going to be 30 days late. It has to be 30 days late for them to report it to the credit bureau. A lot of people don't know that. They just think, oh, I'm late, so I'll just pay it all next month. As soon as you get that money, pay it off. Because you can still, get it before you reach the 30 days. Okay. And the final one that I want to talk about, the factor, is the type of account you have. You have 2 different types of accounts. You have your revolving, you have your installments. Revolvings are accounts that revolve. Once you max them out, you could pay it off, you could use it up again, and it fluctuates. You can continue to use it. That's your credit cards. An installment account is there's just a balance that you're trying to pay down. Those hurt you bad. When my house hit my credit dropped about 30 points when my house, because that's just a big wad of debt as it relates to credit debt ratio. And so installment accounts hurt you when you're trying to build credit because it hurts the debt to credit ratio. Revolving accounts hurt the credit age or the credit history, but it helps the debt to credit ratio because you have more credit extended to you. So if you had $10,000 of credit, and then you get some more credit for $5,000. Now you have $15,000 of credit versus your $2,000 of debt. That helps. That helps your debt to credit ratio. And although eventually your numbers may go down a few with the revolving line, after a couple of months, they'll just start to skyrocket. As long as you're paying good and you're utilizing the account, your numbers will start going up. Believe me, I have seen this happen time and time again, because like I said, I monitored mine, and for a year I kept record of what was going on with the debt. It's a way to monitor your credit. If you know you're trying to buy a house, you can study your own movements and how your creditors report to the credit bureau. You can study that, and you can learn what you need to do based upon how those numbers, and you're just recording everything every day. You're recording it. I would recommend that, especially if you're trying to buy a house. I really would, so that you can get that favorable rate. Okay, like I said, in order to build credit, unfortunately, you have to have credit. If you're just so anti-credit cards, another option for you that may be available to you is to go to the bank and just ask for a secured account. $500 to the bank. It's your own $500 that you're borrowing from, and maybe that they can report that to the credit bureaus. That may be an option. That may be a way around having to fill out for a credit card. Some people are anti-credit, but there may be other ways that you can build your credit. Another way to build your credit is, perhaps you know someone like a parent or a spouse that has excellent credit with a credit card, and they've have good credit history with that credit card and a good payment history with that credit card. Ask them to let you be an authorized user on that credit card. You don't have to use the card, but when you're an authorized user on that credit card, then that credit card is that account will be added to your credit history. Let me tell you, I did this for my husband when we bought our house. He was 2 points away from the credit that he needed to have in order to get approved for the loan. How ridiculous is that? But I looked at our accounts and I said, hey, if I add him on my Discover, I added my husband on my Discover card. In 30 days, his credit went up 50 points. 50 points. I kid you not. His credit score went up 50 points just by adding him to my Discover card. Let me clarify what that is. When you're an authorized user, typically, yes, it means that you're authorized to use the account. You can't use an account that you don't have access to. All you're doing it for is the benefit of having their credit history being reported to your credit file to help boost your numbers. You don't have to get the card from them. They can keep the card. You're just using their information. Well, that's all that I have for this segment. There's a lot more that we need to talk about as far as creditors are concerned. I know I'm going to probably have 2 or 3 videos on creditors, how to talk to creditors, your rights. That's why you printed out the FCRA. That's why you printed out the FDCPA. I cannot wait to go over that, because that's my strength, and I just really want to talk about those things and help you in those areas. And your homework is to go over your credit report. All 3 of the reports, comb them, fine-tooth comb them, make sure each account is accurate. And by accurate, I don't mean just look at it and say, yeah, I owe the debt. I want you to look at each account, and I want you to make sure that the amount is right, that the account is not listed twice and under 2 different account numbers. I want to make sure that that account is not beyond the 7-year statute of limitations that they're allowed to report on your credit report. So if you know you've had this account when you were 19 years old and 20 years old and you're 35 and it's still on your credit, that's a problem. Get you a highlighter, and all those troubled accounts, even if you have questions about them, circle them or highlight them, because when we get to that portion of this Credit 101, we're going to talk about how to repair your credit in each individual account. So that's all I have. Woo-hoo. And I'll see you back here next time.